Tell me if this sounds familiar. You sit down for just 5 minutes, maybe to check your phone, maybe to rest your eyes, maybe to scroll through Wikipedia reading about medieval cheese-making techniques, and then, bam, it's 3 hours later. Or worse, it's tomorrow. Or maybe you have the opposite problem. You're waiting for something to start, and 5 minutes stretches into what feels like an eternity. You check the time every 30 seconds, like a kid on a road trip. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Welcome to ADHD Adultish. I'm your host, Kim Spangler. I'm an ADHD coach who was late diagnosed, and for many, many, many years, I had no idea that my ADHD was the reason time felt like a scam. It doesn't flow in a straight line. It bends, it warps, it disappears completely, and sometimes it just doesn't feel real at all. Which is kind of a problem when the world expects you to do things like show up on time, meet deadlines, or not accidentally hyperfocus until you forget to eat for 18 hours straight. So today, we're diving into the chaotic world of ADHD time perception. We'll talk about why we struggle with time, the different ways ADHD messes with it, and most importantly, some strategies to make time feel a little less like a carnival funhouse with surprises waiting to jump out at you from around every corner. Let's go. So, why does time mess with us? From a brain science standpoint, ADHD affects the structure and chemistry of the brain. Specifically, research shows that the parts of the brain responsible for tracking time, planning ahead, and prioritizing tasks don't communicate properly in people with ADHD, which makes time feel unpredictable. So, what does all this mean for people with ADHD? Well, for neurotypicals, time generally moves at a fairly steady, predictable pace. But for us, time generally exists in two modes. Mode 1, the time warp. This is when time moves way too fast, like you sit down to check your email and suddenly it's dark outside. Or you think, oh, I have plenty of time to get ready, and then somehow it's 5 minutes past the time you were supposed to leave. Where did those 45 minutes go? Who knows? Maybe you blacked out, maybe you got abducted by aliens, maybe you just hyper-focused so hard that reality stopped existing. And then there's mode 2, slow motion. This is when time moves like a snail stuck in mud. Like when you're waiting in line at the DMV and it feels like the universe is punishing you for something you did in a past life. You check your phone, you check the clock, you stop to ponder the great mysteries of life and the vastness of the universe. You internally recite the Gettysburg Address, which you still remember for some reason, even though you can't remember your own birthday half the time. Then finally you check your watch again and, oh yeah, somehow it's been only a fucking minute. Anyway, there's no in between. If we don't feel time passing, it's like it doesn't exist. And if we do feel time passing, it's often unbearable. So, what does this actually mean for everyday life? Let's look at 4 common ways ADHD completely screws with our sense of time, starting with predicting time. Because if I had $1 for every time I misjudged how long something takes, I'd be recording this podcast from my own private island. Sadly, I don't have an island. So, predicting time. We often wildly misjudge how long things take. Sometimes we think something is going to take forever, so we put it off because, who's got time for that? Only to finally do it 3 weeks or months or years later and realize it took like 4 minutes and 27 seconds. Other times we think, this will be super quick, and suddenly an entire afternoon has disappeared. We forgot to eat, and now we're speedrunning our way to whatever thing we are now definitely late for. Plus now we're hangry. So, what can we do about it? Give your brain a reality check. Because your ADHD brain is a liar when it comes to time. It cannot be trusted. The only way to actually know how long something takes is to track it. Literally time yourself doing stuff, especially the tasks you put off because you think they're going to take forever. One of my favorite ways to do this is to use music instead of timers. Instead of setting a countdown timer, play music while you do the thing. You want to know how long it takes to empty the dishwasher? Start a playlist and check how many songs played by the time you finished. Better yet, just put on Bohemian Rhapsody and try to race the song to finish first. I bet you'll win. Hate taking a shower because it feels like it takes forever? Make a shower playlist with each song correlating to a step in your typical shower process. Like, if Dancing Queen is on, I know to be washing my hair. If Crazy Train comes on, I know it's time to grab the body wash. By the time the last song ends, you're done. Alarms and timers can work, but I like this method for several different reasons. First of all, you get to listen to music while you do boring stuff, and I like listening to music. Second, it tricks your brain into feeling time in a more natural way. And also, it makes it easier to compare tasks. Like, oh, I thought laundry was going to take an hour, but it literally was just 3 songs. And if you're someone who chronically underestimates how long things take, you can reverse the method and create a playlist of exactly how much time you have to do something. Then when the playlist ends, so does your work session. It's like having a built-in transition cue. Way better than a random alarm going off and scaring the hell out of you. Bottom line, your ADHD brain lies to you about time, and the only way to beat it is to give yourself proof. And turning it into a game with music makes it way less painful. All right, let's move on to the second way ADHD completely screws with time: future time, or as I like to call it, deadlines? What deadlines? For neurotypical brains, deadlines and upcoming events feel like they're slowly approaching. They sense time passing, so they know, hey, I should probably start working on that thing that's due next week. But for ADHD brains, we have two times: now and not now. If something isn't happening right now, it might as well not exist. Future time feels fake. It doesn't matter if the deadline is in 3 months or 3 days. It all registers in our brain as, I've got time, until suddenly we don't. This is future time blindness, and it's why we end up in panic productivity mode, pulling an all-nighter, somehow becoming a superhuman in the last 24 hours before something is due. Now, if you're thinking, well, maybe I should just harness that last-minute panic mode all the time, let me stop you right there, because that is a dangerous game to play. Sure, it works. Until the day it doesn't. Until the day the pressure isn't quite enough to override the ADHD paralysis, and now you're staring at a blank screen thinking, wow, this is the time. This is the time I finally just don't do the thing. So if last-minute panic is unreliable, what actually helps? First, lie to yourself, but strategically. Your real deadline is next Friday. Tell yourself it's Wednesday. Need to leave by 4:30? Set your alarm for 4:15. The trick here is that your brain will absolutely fight you on this. It knows you're lying, but even if you don't fully believe the fake deadline, it plants the seed that time is running out sooner than you think. And sure, you might still be a little late, but you'll likely be less late than you would have been otherwise. And also, our working memory sucks. Use that to your advantage, because the odds are good that you're going to forget when crunch time comes that you gave yourself that buffer. Another way to help your future time blindness: use visual countdowns to make the future look real. So put them on a giant whiteboard in your face. Use sticky notes, color-coded calendars, anything that you can actually see every day. Don't put it in a drawer where you're going to have to go looking for it. You'll never go looking for it. Digital reminders are great, but if they pop up and you instantly swipe them away, not that helpful. Also, set milestone reminders, not just the ultimate deadline, especially if it's a multi-step project. So instead of, like project due tomorrow, that's too late. Instead, set reminders for the steps leading up to the thing. Write the outline on Monday. Write the first draft Thursday. Do the final edit Saturday. That way, the task isn't just one giant looming deadline. It's broken into smaller checkpoints that force your brain to engage with time before it's an emergency. You can also plan backwards, so you can kind of force yourself to see the timeline. Because we struggle to see how time fits together. We just think, I'll get it done somehow, and then somehow it doesn't happen. So when you catch yourself saying, I'll do it later, try this. Start with looking at the deadline, where it's at in the calendar, and then work backwards to figure out how much time you actually have. Write out what needs to happen and when, because nothing will snap you into reality faster than realizing, oh crap, I don't actually have this much time. I don't have 2 weeks to do the thing. I have 5 work days, and on those days I really only have like an hour to work on the thing. And now, while we're talking about time blindness, we have to discuss that special ADHD moment when you have somewhere to be and you know what time you need to leave, but your brain convinces you that you have exactly enough time to squeeze in just 1 or 2 more things before you go. Need to leave at 4:30? Your brain says, oh, it's 4:25? That's totally enough time to go finish that email and reorganize my purse and make a snack. And then, surprise, you're 5 minutes late. Again. So what do? You need to create a leaving buffer. However long you think you need to get out the door, add 10 minutes. At least. Because getting ready to leave isn't just putting shoes on and walking out. It's finding your keys, grabbing your bag. Oh wait, bathroom break. Oh no, where's my phone again? Actually, I'm actually walking out the door now. Damn it, no, I forgot my sunglasses. Okay, now I'm really leaving. I forgot my water. Finally get in the car. The fuel tank is on E. I need to stop for gas. Now I'm finally on my way. Leaving is a whole ass process. Build in the buffer time. All right, Now let's talk about time management, because even when we do notice time, that doesn't mean we actually know what to do with it. So for most people, time management is like looking at a schedule and following it. But for us, time isn't just something to be followed. It's something that we have to actively wrangle before it gets away from us. It's like trying to give a cat a bath. And one of the biggest mistakes we make, scheduling things like they exist in a vacuum. We think, oh, I have a doctor's appointment at 3, so I'll just put on my calendar, 3 p.m., doctor's appointment on, March 3rd. And then somewhere we're shocked when we're still late. But guess what? Doctor's appointment at 3 p.m. on March 3rd is not the full story. You also have to be getting ready on time, finding your clothes, brushing your hair, brushing your teeth, etc., etc. You have to factor in travel time because teleportation isn't a thing yet. You have to factor in that buffer time we talked about because something silly is going to come up. And then you have to account for any other things that you might need to, like you need to walk the dog. Do you need to drop your kids off at their grandparents' house while you're going to the doctor? Do you have to finish up the work task you're on and tell somebody what you were doing so that they can take over, or write down notes so that you know what you were doing when you come back? And then maybe you need recovery time after, because doctor's appointments can be taxing and you can't just jump into the next thing immediately. So you have to put all that stuff into. So if you're only writing down doctor's appointment at 3 p.m., you're already late. Another ADHD time management fail, not building in transition time between tasks. How many times have you scheduled something back to back with absolutely zero time in between, as if you were just going to blink from one meeting to the next, like some kind of time-bending wizard? Or even worse, you think, oh, I'll just squeeze in this one quick thing before my next call. And suddenly you're running late because you forgot that thing was going to take longer than you thought. And also you needed time to switch gears and remember what the hell meeting you're going into next. When you schedule a meeting, a task, anything like that, you need to add a few minutes. It can be just a few minutes of transition time, but just account for that. Don't put things right up against each other because it doesn't work. Give yourself space to mentally reset before the next thing, because if you schedule things back to back with no breaks, you're basically setting yourself up for failure. Our brains do not do instant task switching. If you want to hear me talk more about task switching and transitions, I've got a whole episode on that topic. It should be a few episodes back, but I'll link it in the show notes too. All right, so now we know how ADHD screws with our sense of time. It also messes with how we organize events within time. This is called time sequencing, aka the ability to put things in the correct order in a way that makes sense. And if you have ADHD, you probably already know where this is going. Because if there is something we excel at, it's starting a project at the absolute worst possible place. Like, have you ever gone to clean your kitchen and instead of doing the most obvious thing, like washing dishes or wiping down countertops, you instead somehow end up hyper-focusing on reorganizing the spice drawer for an hour? And no, the spice drawer probably did not need reorganizing. Or you sit down to start a project and somehow the very first thing you think you should do is design a new color-coded spreadsheet to help you track your progress on the project instead of, working on the project. Why do our brains struggle with time sequencing? Well, first, it relies not only on perceptions of time, but also organization and prioritization, and those executive function things that are hard for us. So often, instead of seeing tasks as a logical sequence, we see everything at once, which really means we see nothing, right? It's like static on a TV. And so our brains don't know what to grab onto, so it just grabs onto whatever seems the most interesting in the moment. One of the best ways to avoid doing things in like an order that doesn't make sense is to just write out the steps before you start. If a task has multiple steps, just take a quick second to write them down, and seeing them. First of all, you have the actual act of writing them down that helps with processing, and then being able to visualize them can help make them more real and help with figuring out what is more important compared to the other thing. You can also use asking yourself what needs to happen first as a cue. So before you start, just practice pausing. Ask yourself, what is step 1? Just try to interrupt that impulse to leap into starting at step 8. Externalizing the sequencing also helps with task initiation, because often when we're struggling to make ourselves start something, it's because our brains just don't know what the hell we need to do first. So that's what I've got for this week. Remember, if you struggle with time, you were not alone. This will not be the last episode we talk about this either. Time may not be the enemy, but it sure isn't our friend. So don't feel bad about trying to trick it and your brain into working with you. If this episode hit home for you, let me know. Drop it in the comments, message me, or tag me on social media. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it. Send it to your fellow ADHDers who also think that time is a weird soup. And grab my free ADHD routine starter kit, because as much as we hate them, habits and routines can be hugely helpful in overcoming our time warp issues. Look for the link in the show notes, or you can find it on my website, levelupmyadhd.com. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next time.